We're Group 21, and our chosen topic is how to make women more often the front man of the band.
As part of our presentation on how to make women more often the frontman of a band, we really decided to focus on the history, facts, and some prominent figures of women in the music industry. So, when it comes to the history, facts, and figures of women in music, there is historical evidence of discrimination against and, in fact, the discouragement of women participating in musical careers, which now permeates into our present. Historically, the music industry has not been the most open to accepting female artists. To quote, these women could perform privately and even compose simple music, but performing for profit undermine their femininity and the social status of the family. This is by Shell in 2018. This discouragement of women and the lack of visibility for them has created a discriminatory view of women in music that has trickled even to present day. It's the same view as back in even the early 19th century that for a woman to be successful in their careers, they must also fit into the category of what a woman is, a category usually given to them that no way represents their character or style. Despite this, some women have been figureheads for certain genres over the last few decades, such as Aretha Franklin, Diana Ross, and Stevie Nicks. These women that have been at the front row have been there for so long, but women have still been pushed back in certain genres, such as punk and rock. These genres have been seen as more masculine than genres like of pop. With this, it's almost naturally happened that female musicians are more seen in feminine genres like pop and unseen in the masculine genres like rock. In fact, it is still really seen today that masculine music genres tend to shut down any women that want to make it big in said genres, such as punk and rock. An interesting thing, though, is even though genres such as pop are seen as more feminine and thus have many more figureheads within the genre, there's not a lack of male figureheads in pop, unlike with women in genres such as rock. However, some women have been really successful in those genres, such as Hayley Williams, along with her band Paramore, have been breaking down stereotypes of women in music that are prevalent in the more masculine genres. Hayley Williams of Paramore is the band's frontman and most commonly known figure. She is their lead vocalist and keyboardist. With the lead of Hayley, Paramore have managed to become well known and idolised in their mixed preferred genres of rock, punk, and pop, and even achieving a Grammy Award in the Best Rock Song category in 2015 for their song Ain't It Fun. Hayley has proven that women can make it big in their goals no matter how astronomical the odds are. The problem is still seen though, as even though Hayley is very successful, she's one of few that can be named off the common person's head. Women in music still face discrimination with an extreme lack of help that no man attempting a career in music would typically face.
To add to what Keane said surrounding the facts and history with women in popular music today, it is clear when searching online that it is much more difficult to find front women in bands compared to front men. Women have a high prominence in other genres of music, however, in the rock genre, front women are much less common, and this is what I'll be focusing on. In my opinion, it takes a lot more for a woman to be taken seriously in the leading role of a band and be recognised as a true musician. Being a front woman in rock can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, you will have a handful of people that will give you some short-term interest based upon your looks, but at the same time, I feel that most women in rock have to work a lot harder to overcome the stigma of looks over talent. To be recognised as a true musician, women in rock have to work arguably harder than men do to be taken seriously. So while some women may achieve quicker short-term success based upon their looks, others have to work very hard to become a memorable musician. However, there are plenty of other reasons why there are less female artists in the rock genre, such as demonization of feminine women, rock music's obsession with masculinity, sexualization, and the lack of respect for women in rock. The rock genre is often defined as a form of male rebellion, therefore the rock world is predominantly male, which creates sex-segregated friendship networks, which makes it even more difficult for male rock musicians to join in. An example of a successful frontwoman in the rock world is seen in the band Paramore, which is an American rock band which was formed in 2004. The lead vocalist Hayley Williams was scouted as a teenager and has worked hard for the success of the band ever since. Paramore's music style is regarded as alternate rock, with some songs displaying more formulaic rock and others displaying a range of styles, giving the music an alternate feeling. Hayley Williams mentioned in an interview that the band isn't just a short pop rock girl with spiky hair and a bad attitude, which displays a stereotypical rock girl image which most of the public would perceive. According to research done by Evelyn MacDonald, the Director of Journalism at Loyola Marymount University, only 7.7% of inductees to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame are women. In 2017, the MacDonald found only a quarter of artists booked at the 23 biggest music festivals were women. Since then, more than 190 international festivals pledged to have 50-50 gender split by 2022. But as of 2018, the magazine still found that still 7 out of 10 artists on the festival bills are men or all male bands.
The concept of sexism has had a significant impact on women performances in bands. Firstly, it can be seen in male critics. There are a variety of subtle and nuanced reasons why women have a tougher time establishing themselves than men in the music industry, especially in traditional bands. One of them has to do with how and who is talked about when it comes to the value of music. In the early days of rock and roll, male critics were especially frequent, and the males who have written about music have tended to focus on men who make music, making it difficult for women to get involved. Some male critics explicitly believe that women are incapable of creating good music and therefore reject them as a result. Critics, for the most part, do what everyone else does. They gravitate towards music that they can relate to because it represents something about themselves and their lives as well as their view of the world, something that women lacked dearly from the early days. Another form of discrimination can be seen in existing and famous bands. For example, only male musicians make up the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Radiohead, and Nirvana. It is reasonable to suppose that freshly formed bands will continue to pursue the same segmentation in their bands simply because of their popularity and success. Newly formed bands that are comparable to the older successful ones will find it easier to follow in their footsteps. In short, it has an impact on prospective musicians' practices. What about women and the potential obstacles they may face when diving into the industry? For women, issues of representation become crucial here. If you don't see somebody who looks like you in the canon, it's difficult to believe you can compose good music of the same expected standard. As a result, a male-dominated canon works to exclude future female musicians. That's not to say women can't be successful in the music industry. Nevertheless, women who are successful are more likely to perform in the pop genre. Pop success is frequently associated with a highly sexualized image, which is generally dismissed by critics, again highlighting the evident act of sexism. Factors like these operate as major roadblocks for young female musicians who want to be lead singers in bands, causing them to question things that shouldn't be questioned and wouldn't be questioned if they were of the opposite sex. What about women trying to break through into the music industry? Young women attempting to break into the music industry have also faced issues. This includes how they must also contend with the way that music-related social places are frequently defined as masculine and policed in various ways by men. Many female artists have complained about men ridiculing and dismissing them in live music venues, music stores, and when learning to play music. A few female musicians have even been questioned if they're with the band or if they're just there to keep an eye on their guy. Overall, the image bands project has questioned and pushed aspiring female musicians' musical abilities. This culture has been influenced by a lengthy history of rock and roll, and totally changing to modern standards will be tough.
Next, we will address the issues that women face as the front woman of a band. Maternity leave, career or children. It's an unfortunate dilemma faced by every working woman with a baby on the way. Many new fathers are not given paternity leave. As a result of this, the responsibility and care of a newborn is left to the mother. However, women require maternity leave to allow their bodies to repair following the trauma of childbirth. Research shows that women having access to maternity leave directly relates to lower infant mortality and reduced maternal stress. Around the world, many governments are starting to offer extended paid maternity leave. However, there's some evidence that suggests longer leaves for new mothers may interrupt women's careers and ultimately harm their prospects in the long run. Maternity leave could lead to a loss of job-specific skills and make a mother's re-entry into the labour market more difficult. A study found that around half of women who had taken maternity leave believe that it has harmed their career progression. There are many questions that must be addressed by both the expecting mother and the band as the front woman of a band prepares to have a baby. Should a woman take a lengthy maternity leave knowing that more time at home can improve the well-being of both mother and child? However, if the front woman in a band takes maternity leave, what happens to the rest of the band? Is the front woman replaceable? And if so, for how long is a replacement needed for? What happens if the band is unable to perform during this time? This may leave the band without a form of income during this duration. There are many questions that accompany the possibility of the front woman of the band being replaced during her maternity leave. This is because we usually link the identity of a band to its lead singer and or chief songwriter. As long as that person is still around, we're willing to accept a new drummer or new keyboardist. This may not be fair, but it's true. Childcare. Many bands are required to do long nationwide or even worldwide tours to promote their music and albums. These tours can take months to complete. During this time, band members will have very few days off. This results in them not seeing their families and friends for many months at a time. There are two options for mothers in bands. Leave the child at home with the father or another parental figure, or bring the child on tour with the band. Bringing a child on the road during a tour is an option. However, it is a very difficult one. The child would require constant monitoring and would need a childminder or nanny. As the child grows older, they would need to begin school. Although homeschooling is possible, it would require a teacher or designated person to educate the child. This would be a huge cost for the mother and band, and this cost would be unavoidable if the child is brought on tour.
Education. The music industry is very male-dominated, from staff in vinyl shops to music engineers and stadium staff. Many of these roles are fulfilled by men. Leading female singers are often intimidated by this industry and feel as if the exclusion grew from childhood experiences. Examples of not being encouraged the same to join bands and take up instruments like guitar and so forth. Education plays a huge role in encouraging women to become curious with instruments and the music industry. However, the discrimination based on sex has always been a factor that has held young females back. Starting and sustaining a career in new music can be difficult as fewer females receive recording labels over their male counterparts. The deficit of female artists, and in particular, female leading artists, has helped to outline the simple fact that gender affects all of us, whether we choose to be blindsided or acknowledge the fact.
Several women in the past have been able to help break the stigma around front women and lead singers being females in the music industry. Maddalena Casulana was an extremely influential figure when it came to education and music for women. Maddalena was Italian. She was the first woman in history to publish a book full of her own compositions. I have 3 facts here, the first one being between the years 2012 and 2020, the statistics show that women made up for less than 1/3 of the artists in the music industry. The second fact is 12.6% of songwriters who have made the charts between 2012 and 2020 are women. Numbers of female artists didn't rise above 30% in this time, while males never dropped below 70%. This just shows how dominated the music industry is by males.
Taking all the points into consideration, we ask ourselves, what can be done going forward? Well, in an ideal world, more women would work in roles in the music scene that have typically been male-based so far, such as working as a sound engineer or a staff in a music shop. If there were more females in stores, then the women themselves would find it a lot easier to go in, and they'd feel so much more comfortable asking questions, maybe even buying an instrument or seeking advice. Music genres would not be masculine or feminine. They shouldn't need to be categorized for a specific style. As long as somebody has a talent or passion for a certain genre, such as rock, your gender shouldn't even be questioned in this way. Women should be able to play gigs, make albums and advertise their music without being made feel uncomfortable by men. Looks should never be a factor in how successful you may be. And it shouldn't even be a question that women should stand at the front of a band and be the front person. Everything should be equal, performance-wise and money-wise. It should always be 50-50, no matter what the gender is. So how can we overcome the issues? It is obvious from everything that we have learned today so far that there is a huge societal issue here. There has been recent but also historic examples of how it has not been fair for women. So we revert back to the original question: how can we put more women often at the front of a band? The first thing we can do is educate the next generations. What we need is a society of open-minded people to create an environment with more freedom, no matter what gender you may be. We also need to continue to take a stand as women. It can be extremely disheartening taking knockbacks and reading some of these facts and figures today, but it is so important that we don't let it stop us from making our voices heard. How do we do this? We do this by continuing to speak up, push down barriers, and connect with more people on this topic. Educate each other and educate the next generation.